Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, and today we're back with another episode of Player Spotlight. Now, for those who haven't seen the first two episodes of this series, firstly, go back and watch them. But secondly, this is a series where we look at some Socceroos players who are on the periphery of a Graham Arnold squad, on the fringes, and look at their hopes for the World Cup in November, where they sit in Graham Arnold's ranks. Now, of course, the first two episodes are already on the YouTube channel, so go back and watch them. And this episode will be on, as you can see by the title and the thumbnail, Denis Genreau. So let's get into it. So who is Denis Genreau? Well, he's a 23-year-old central midfielder, actually born in France, not actually born in Australia. He was born in Europe, but he did obviously have the choice to represent both France or Australia, as I should say, for international level, and he did choose the Socceroos. He's a former Melbourne City Youth Academy product, spending a couple of years in the youth system before being promoted to the senior team, playing 11 times, before moving to Macarthur and playing 22 times for the expansion club in the season into the 2020-2021 season. In between those spells in Australia, between Melbourne City and Macarthur, he did have a spell in Netherlands playing in the top division, which lasted half a season. He's represented Australia at under 20s level, under 23 level, and the senior Socceroos side twice, which we'll touch on a little bit later on. And he's currently playing at Ligue 1 side Toulouse in France, getting them promoted last season, finishing top of the table in Ligue 2, playing 34 times and having 20 starting appearances. Now, as we do on this series, let's take a deeper look into the profile of Denis Genreau and what he actually offers on the pitch. Let's look at Denis Genreau's midfield profile because, like I said at the top of the show, he is a very versatile midfielder, can play in a lot of positions and in a lot of systems, which makes him a coach's dream, in all honesty. But if we look at his system when he played at Macarthur, he played in a double pivot, a slightly deeper midfield double pivot alongside Bernat. He can also play as a number 10, which is something that we've seen at Toulouse at stages last season. However, in my opinion, his most natural position is playing as an outside central midfielder in a midfield three, more often than not on the right-hand side, and playing as this attacking wide midfielder type position where he's able to use his width on the right-hand side, but also come into the half spaces and be very dangerous coming into the final third. He has his natural game style is very offensive, very aggressive, and that profile suits the Mezzala role perfectly. So if you don't really know what a Mezzala is, to sum it up, it's basically a wide central midfielder that plays in a midfield three or a midfield diamond, and he plays outside of a slightly deeper holding midfielder in a single pivot. So the role of the Mezzala it's kind of in between a number 8 and a number 10. It's considering the positions that Genreau often gets himself into, where he ends his runs or when the final third play ends, you could say that he plays as a number 10, but he does have a lot of influence playing a slightly deeper, which kind of allows him to play that Mezzala role. Now, some very interesting stats that have come from his time at Toulouse last season was that he had the second most accurate final third passes for Toulouse last season with 14.96, as well as having the fifth most tackles with 2.09 and 3.89 ground joules won, but both being the second highest in his side. Now, this is one of the key aspects of a Mezzala, as a Mezzala is almost the first line of defense, maybe apart from the attacking three, but the Mezzala is the first line of defense. They need to be able to press high, be strong in a tackle, and be able to really get the ball back in dangerous positions to allow for quick counter-attacks, quick counter-pressing opportunities. And if we bring up his heat map right here, we can see that it is very right-sided heavy, playing in that half space in between the lines there. And this heat map also shows the mix between a Mezzala and a Carrillo. Now, a Carrillo is another one of these kind of weird hipster roles, if you were to call it. But it is, to basically sum it up, it's a half-space defender. So if you were to try and relate it to the elite of football, someone like a Jordan Henderson for Liverpool, where he's able to come across to those half spaces and be a defensive outside central midfielder is probably the best way to call it. His versatility will hold him in great stead for whatever club he plays for, and even in the national team, because like we saw with the heat map, if you bring it up one more time, he's able to play slightly deeper as well. He's obviously right-sided heavy, but he's able to get into those half spaces and make those runs into the final third, which allows him to be such an offensive threat and give a different dynamic to whatever midfield he plays in. So let's take a look at his Socceroos career to date. Like I said at the top of the show, he was capped twice. So let's take a further look at those two matches. So let's look at Denis Genreau's Socceroos career to date. Now, if you look at the most recent international break, he was in the squad for the games against Peru and the UAE. However, he didn't feature in either of them, only being on the bench for both of those games. But the two games that he did play, if we take him in reverse chronological order, the most recent game he played was against Saudi Arabia in March, and that was, unfortunately for the Socceroos, a dead rubber. So he was given an opportunity. In that game, he played in a double pivot alongside Jimmy Jago, and he was the more advanced player in the double pivot, which is akin to his role at MacArthur when he played there in the 2020-2021 season. He almost acted as a number 10 in a sense. However, he did help out defensively and was able to give the Socceroos a bit more defensive reassurance. He didn't have the greatest of games, as we've mentioned in previous episodes. The Socceroos weren't able to get a foothold into that game at all, and a lot of players that game did underperform, and Genreau was one of them. However, that's not really a criticism of him. He just fell victim to the circumstances. Some of the more impressive stats that have come out of that game for him is that he went 100% successful dribble percentage, having 2 successful dribbles from 2 attempts, and he had 4 ground duels won from 7 attempts, which is another aspect of his game which is very strong. He's very defensively solid and strong in a tackle. His debut for the Socceroos was against Chinese Taipei early on in the Socceroos World Cup qualification campaign. He did start in a double pivot in that game as well alongside Kenny Dougal, and he was against Saudi Arabia. He was the more attacking of the double pivot. However, due to the nature of the opposition, you can't really take a lot out of that Socceroos debut. A lot of players during that spell of games were given opportunities to impress, and Genreau was definitely one of the players that did impress. However, like I said, with the nature of the opposition, it is very tricky to judge him on that game, because we saw against a side like Saudi Arabia, who were able to control the ball, the difference in quality was drastic. So we'll take that game with a pinch of salt, not really analyze it, and look forward to what he can produce for the Socceroos in the future. And that is the big question that is on everyone's minds. Where does he fit for the future of the Socceroos? And let's take an in-depth look right now. Now, where does his future lie for the Socceroos? And I feel like this is going to be a very tricky question, and it's going to be interesting to see how it develops over time, from now into the World Cup especially, because considering the depth that Australia have in midfield with the likes of Adrian Hustic and Aaron Moy, and even Tom Rogic to an extent, who are all going to be certain starters should they all be fit and in the squad, it's going to be very interesting to see where he can fit into the Socceroos team. Now, if you're looking at a position where he could fill in, that it is that Jackson Irvine role. Now, for the games against the UAE and Peru, Jackson Irvine was that third midfielder who partnered Aaron Moy and Adrian Hustic. That is the position where he will be competing for. He can be that third midfielder to provide the energy and spark. And his naturally offensive nature what kind of hinders him in a sense, because Hustic is able to dominate that position and really has a stranglehold over that attacking central midfielder. He's probably overall the best midfielder that's not a guaranteed starter. He will fit into that bracket with Riley McGree, Jackson Irvine, these other midfielders that are just waiting to see and waiting to impress, and a rotation and a sporadic first team appearance is going to be what he's looking at. However, I think this season is going to be very important for Genreau. If he can go into the top division in France for Toulouse, a recently promoted side, and really tear it up and really push for that starting spot, not only in his team but for the Socceroos, that will hold him in great stead for the future. And the first couple of weeks, the first month, 2 months of the season for Denis Genreau will be massive for him in terms of his World Cup hopes, because I think it's undeniable that he should feature into the squad, but whether or not he starts is a different question. And I feel like the first month and a half, first 2 months of his stint in France, or in the top division of France, will be very crucial to determine whether or not he does get that starting spot for the World Cup in November. So yes, thank you all very much for watching. That has been episode 3 of Player Spotlight for Denis Genreau. Thank you all very much for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Leave your thoughts about what players you'd like to see be given a Player Spotlight in the future. I've been your host, Ari Stamatakos. Make sure you subscribe to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. Like the video. See you guys next time, and goodbye.